Lucy, as you've been part of your founding your community, and obviously for a long time, so you will have heard from many people who've come on board at Dry January. So I'd be interested to know, maybe if I don't know if you've got a percentage, but roughly how many people you've found do come on board with Soberistas at Dry January and then carry on. But also, I wonder whether in your experience, you could answer what happens. I'm not expecting you to be a nutritionist or a doctor, but what do you find commonly happens to people? In other words, how quickly is the actual withdrawal, and at what point do people start to maybe feel better, even if it's just feedback that you've heard from your community?
Yeah, January, as you can imagine, is our busiest month for new members. So we had loads and loads of new sign-ups. But actually in December as well, we get quite a lot of people signing up to Soberistas. I think kind of anticipating the excessive alcohol consumption around Christmas. We had about 50 people celebrating their 1 year soberversary, as they call it, on Soberistas this January the 1st. So they'd all started with a Dry January and then carried on because they just thought it was so good, they didn't want to go back. In terms of the kind of immediate benefits and how long that kind of takes, I mean, I saw in myself and I see in Soberistas like a kind of range of benefits over a period of like 6 months to a year. There's immediate benefits, like Andy said, about waking up feeling brighter and more energetic and having a bit more get up and go. But I think the longer term, really deep benefits of like clarity and rebuilding your self-esteem, having a sense of purpose, reconnecting with people in your life, your children, your partner, your friends, your family. Those things happen a lot more slowly over time, but there is a massive change there over a course of the first few months of not drinking, and it was really, really noticeable to me. I remember when I drank, and in the immediate weeks after I stopped drinking, I couldn't even hold eye contact with people when I was talking to them. I found it really, really difficult speaking to people unless I was drinking. I'd relied on that false courage for so long. And over the course of the first year of not drinking, and my confidence just went through the roof, and the kind of nervous jitteriness that I'd always experienced in social situations, unless I was drunk, just went. And now I feel really confident. I've been on TV loads and spoken at conferences, and I don't even get nervous. And the difference in me as a kind of confident, normal human being now, today, to who I was 10 years ago is really quite phenomenal. And there is a person in the audience here who I've not seen for about 15 years who will definitely back me up on kind of what a big boozer I was. And I don't think, I'm quite looking forward to speaking to her after this, because I've not seen her since I stopped drinking. So she'll definitely reassure anybody who has any doubts there about the difference in a person once they've not drunk for a long time.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Andy, similarly, within your community, I'd be interested to know how many people come on board with 1 year no beer at the beginning for Dry January, and the kind of success rates, if you like. But also, I'd be really interested to know from your perspective, as an NLP practitioner, which is neuro-linguistic programming for anyone who doesn't know, how do we go about making that kind of switch in our mindset? Because that's really what it's about, isn't it? Certainly, if we're going to continue, what would be your tips, if you like, for anybody who rather than this feeling of I've just got to get through it, it's only a couple of weeks left. If I get through it, get to February, I'll be okay. But actually, I know that what you're going to say is you need a mindset shift. So how do we do that?
Right, to answer the first question, we were amazed when we set up 1 year no beer. We assumed it was going to be all about Jan, and then the rest of the year would be almost tumbleweed, and it's consistent the whole year through. And even, as Lucy just mentioned, in December, we had probably as many sign-ups in December as we've had in Jan. Dec and Jan are the peak months, but it's consistent the whole year through. I think people are reaching a point, they just want a break, they want to do something different. And then regards the best way to gain momentum, to have this mindset shift for anyone that's doing Dry Jan, in my opinion, is really simple. You've just got to connect with the wins right now, in the moment. Forget about the long-term stuff, forget about Feb, Jan, March, or all the sort of esoteric reason why. what is it giving you in the moment? If you wake up in the morning and you feel more energized, that's a massive win, right? If you've got more time, if your eyes are bright, if your skin looks better, if someone turns around and says, wow, you look great, if you lose a bit of weight, if you've got more connection, if you have more time to spend with your loved ones, these are massive wins. Connect with all the massive wins in the moment, all the alcohol-free advantages, of which there are so many. And then you start to build this momentum in your mind that actually I'm winning all the time. I feel great. You know, my body's healing, my mind's healing. And then you'll just keep that momentum going, and it becomes so much easier rather than, again, as suggested, just sort of holding on to get to the end of the Feb. Just connect with all the wins in the moment. When you do that, you'll have this mindset shift, and very quickly you'll want to continue. And one of our biggest stats is that 85% of people that get to 90 days with us continue. 85%, and the reason they do is because they're loving it. They're having a great time, they feel amazing. Why wouldn't you continue? That's my point with this all the time. If you're enjoying it and you feel great, keep going.
Yeah, that's a fantastic message, and I want to pick up on that with Richard, because I've looked at some of the stuff that you're doing. It looks fantastic. It's great that you're part of this, and it feels very forward-thinking. And forgive me if I'm completely wrong, because I might be, but I wrote a blog just over a year ago, and in order to write that blog, I was looking at some of the government stuff and some of the stuff that we go to, and I thought it was alcohol concern. Now, forgive me if it wasn't, but anyway, it was something that was kind of felt very formal. I was right at the beginning of my journey, so I was just sort of vaguely looking around, and what it seemed to suggest was that if you're going for dry January, a really good tip is to stay away from pubs and more or less keep your head down. I'm not suggesting you wrote that for a second, but that was kind of the vibe, was get on with it for that month and don't go near a pub and don't think about drinking. Rather than, as Andy's just been saying, and what you're doing now, which is very much about, actually, there is this amazing positivity around it. So don't worry about answering whether or not it was your business. I'm sure it wasn't. But have you come across that formal stance of white knuckle it till you get to February?
Absolutely. You know, there is this quite strong strand in the narrative of you are giving something up for January, right? And I actually think that, to a degree, Sober for October and Triathlon, which are fundraising campaigns, they're not behaviour change campaigns, I think they play into that a bit. I'm going to do something really hard, like throw myself out of a plane, have a bath of baked beans. That's a bit 1970s fundraising, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, I'm on Tiswas now in my head. Or I'm going to give up alcohol for a month. Oh, that's going to be so hard. But don't worry, I'll raise loads of money. But I really, really have a problem with that message. And we call it the sort of cave mentality. I'm going to light the fire. I'm going to get under my... Well, they don't have duvets in caves, do they? Whatever warm item, my leopard skin. Get under my leopard skin, and I'm going to stay there for 31 days until it's over. That is just mental. And I think what we're trying to say to people, what everyone's telling us, and what is at the heart of Dry January, is what are you gaining? You are gaining, first and foremost, understanding and learning. We don't call the app Try Dry and the book Try Dry for nothing. This is a experiment, right? This is a moment of 31 days of learning and reflection, exactly what these guys are saying, so that you can understand what my triggers are. Why is it that Joe? It's Joe. I need to stop going out with Joe, you know. Or it's the hard day at work. It's something to do with cooking, or whatever your experiences will be. Those 31 days are 31 days, not just to, you know, do a challenge. The challenge is to learn and reflect. That's the number one challenge. And I would say getting out there, realizing you can go out and have fun without alcohol. From my experience, and I think many people here will agree with me on this or resonate, is that you've only ever been out socializing with alcohol. So you think the alcohol is essential. But my little way of thinking about this, and bear with me, this is a bit odd, but I've also only ever gone out with friends having fun wearing pants, right? But it's definitely not the pants causing the fun. It's just something that was happening, me wearing pants, at the same time as I was going out having fun with my friends. So I don't think the pants are causing the fun, and I've learned it wasn't the alcohol causing the fun. What was causing the fun was good friends, great conversation, nice atmosphere, and actually sometimes it was the alcohol that was getting in the way of that. So I think once you crack that in your head and go, you know, it's not the alcohol, it's not the central pillar around which fun happens, you're great, and you can go out to the pub commando.
Thank you. One thing that I think is really important is that I think someone touched on it, the way that we do tend to beat ourselves up a little bit, you know, most of us, if we slip or if we, you know, we're feeling quite negative, and actually bringing it back to a bit of self-care and being kind to ourselves, which is, you know, very much where your fabulous book comes in, Shahroo. Tell us where kindness fits in, and if you've got a top tip for someone, you know, who's trying to do Dry January or is getting into this journey, how can they just be kind to themselves?
It'll be my pleasure. First of all, you probably need to redefine kindness. And shift your definition from being something that gives you immediate relief to something you'll be happy you did in a month or a year for yourself. People who struggle to know how to treat themselves with kindness, I suggest that they practice treating themselves for 1 week as they would treat the body of the person they love most in the whole world. And then they tend to know exactly how to behave with kindness. I'd also say, listen in the next time you do something that you're not so proud of. So say you like lock your keys in the car or whatever, just a day-to-day thing. And listen in to how you speak to yourself about it. And whether it sounds reasonable or fair, or in a motivational context, whether it sounds useful to you. Because very often when I ask clients to think back to what threw them off track with a challenging plan, often it isn't the blip or the deviation from their plan that threw them off ultimately. It was the conversation they had with themselves about that blip that defined whether a lapse became a relapse. And I think very often people think that these are automatic behaviors and that we have to be impulsive, and it's almost like we're possessed. But actually, if you slow down the process, which is all that a lot of this mindful stuff is about essentially remembering that there's a step that happens between wanting to do something and actually doing it. And in that step, you have an opportunity to have a kind conversation with yourself, which I recommend being the same kind of conversation you'd have with someone else. So if a person that you really care about locked their keys in the car, you probably wouldn't call them a waste of space. You would probably, and you know, just like your teacher said when you were younger, you're just a crap key losing whatever. Actually, you probably just go, come on, it's not the end of the world, we all do it, move on, whatever, and not beat ourselves up. So you can practice this on a day-to-day basis, because unfortunately, a lot of us carry around a lot of core beliefs and kind of warped logic about things, all or nothing thinking, catastrophizing. All of these things are things that we can undo if we're willing to slow down the process and listen to how we're speaking to ourselves.
Thank you. The time is flying by, and I want to allow some time for you guys to ask questions as well. So I'm going to go to Andy, if that's all right, for a moment. I'll probably ask you all this, but Andy, what would be can you give me like just one big benefit of doing Dry January, and your top tip for anyone who's coming up to, you know, when we're coming up to the 31st, what happens then to make that change last?
I guess the number one advantage, again, that most people don't realize is time. You know, we're all so time poor, we're all so rushed. When you take a break from alcohol, you get loads of time back, because you get your energy back, you get your mojo back to get up in the mornings. You don't waste as much time in pubs, for example. Use that time wisely. Again, just constantly connect with the fact that your life is changing, your life is getting better. Top tip, I think, for Dry Jan is very much embrace the change. Throw yourself into the alcohol-free action. Don't hide away, don't become a social hermit, don't lock yourself away. Get out and be even more social. Go to the pub, drink alcohol-free. Look at this wonderful festival we've got here. There are tons of options now. Get out there, get amongst it, be happy, be vibrant, and then you're a winner, right? Because you've got the best of both worlds. You've got your social life back. You've learned how to relax again without alcohol. You can de-stress without alcohol. You just don't need it in your life, and you can keep going.
Excellent, thank you. I'm really glad you brought up the issue of time, because it's a big one. Actually, you don't realise till you stop drinking how much time you spent, not just drinking, but thinking about drinking, and have you got enough, and just everything connected with it, not just the physical act of drinking. So you're so right. And of course, that more time frees you up to think, okay, well, maybe I do want to go to the gym or go for a run or treat myself more kindly. So I appreciate you raising that. Lucy, can I ask you the same thing? Your top benefit, if you like, that you would say? I know there are many, but number one, if you like. And again, what would you say is your top tip for people when they come to the 31st of January?
Well, I think to approach Dry January, the best way really is to see it as an opportunity to assess your relationship with alcohol and to find out a little bit about yourself as a person for the first time, probably in a long time, if you drank anything like I did. So I was drinking kind of probably 2 or 3 glasses of wine most nights, and then at the weekend a lot more. I was spending half the week thinking about drinking, half the week hungover, and it left no time at all for getting to know myself as a person, understanding who I am, what I want to do with my life, and giving myself the opportunity to try new things. So 4 weeks is an amazing time and opportunity to get to know yourself, just stop all that madness, that sort of get off the merry-go-round, and to just take a breather and assess your life, really. So it's a nice kind of way of looking at it without it feeling like a punishment. See it as an opportunity. And I think when you get to the 31st of January, I would look back and really journaling is a great way as well of kind of reminding yourself of all the benefits you're getting from not drinking. So keep a note of everything, every day, how it's made you feel, what you've been going through. And when you get to the end of January, look back on all those notes and ask yourself honestly, has my life been better or worse for not drinking? And look at all the reasons why it's been better, and then see if you can incorporate that going forwards, and if you really want those benefits to continue. I know I did, and all the people on Soberistas who have stopped drinking, they do too, and that's why they carry on not drinking.
Great, thank you. And I really appreciate you picking up on that, because there was, for anyone who's here yesterday, there was a bloggers panel, and people were saying that actually at the beginning, sometimes it can feel very secret when you give up drinking, depending on who your immediate friends are, which is why, of course, your communities are so important, and Club Soda, and it can feel very secret. So, and you, for a while, don't actually know who you are sometimes. You feel so very different in who you are. So writing things down can make a massive difference, even if you don't end up sharing your blog with the world. Just the act of writing down how you're feeling. I actually looked back at some of the things I'd written a year ago, and goodness, I was really kind of confused. But I'm glad I wrote that down, because I needed an outlet for that. I didn't publish it, thankfully, but I think that's a great tip. Yeah, sure. No, and the same questions for you. The same questions for you, if you would, Shiru.
You're absolutely right. I completely agree with you. But if anyone's not got into the habit of journaling, I found this journal hack that has changed my life, and I keep sharing it with loads of people, and they love it. And that is that 5 minutes every morning, write down quickly what you think is going to test you that day and how you want to respond when it comes around. And I'm telling you, it will change your life for all sorts of reasons. Because when it comes to self-awareness and resilience, we often underestimate that even if we don't have a coping strategy in place for that moment, forewarned is forearmed. And that element of control that you were talking about earlier is completely correct. When you can start observing a craving and going, I knew this would happen, so-and-so is likely to piss me off, and in response, I was going to want to drink. How textbook. And to observe the body that way makes it more of an academic process of self-awareness, as opposed to a punitive process of restriction and deprivation.
Excellent, thank you. And that brings us back to, I don't know if anyone heard the interview that I did with Catherine Gray yesterday. That was fantastic. And of course, just the title of her book actually sums up what we've been talking about, the unexpected joy of being sober. Because for many people, they find suddenly, oh, wow, actually, I do feel joyful. And that's something they hadn't expected. But one of the things that Catherine was talking about is this concept, if you like, of the addictive voice, which is what you're sort of touching on, Shiru, in that you hear this kind of voice in your head, but recognizing it is the key. So appreciate it.